So it's great that so many of you are able to join us for this part of the afternoon, and thank you also to Watermans and to Áine for everything you've done to organise this. My name is Saphia Crowther and I'm an editor at the research headquarters of the human rights organisation Amnesty International. Thank you, by the way, Michaela, for the plug for the Amnesty Twitter account earlier on. I'd really love to know what our overlap is with Kim Kardashian. How many of our 2 million members are also following her? I think that's probably quite an interesting Venn diagram. Shared Twitter followers there. Even though I can't quite see you all, I'm quite interested to know who we have in the audience and what your expertise is. So I wonder if we could have a quick show of hands for people who are working in the creative industries or who are themselves artists. So that's most people, in fact. And how many of you also have some involvement in a human rights organisation or work in social justice or that thing? I was just asking for people's background, so how many people work in the arts and also have maybe a human rights or a social justice. Yeah. Fantastic. So be expecting and looking forward to some really good questions from you of experience of both fields.
There's no doubt, as we're looking on the newsreels and we're seeing the reports, that there's a loss of a global moral compass. And lawlessness. We've got warlords that are contravening the Article 51 and are targeting civilians, and we're having horrendous reports of hospitals being targeted, doctors, even while they're performing surgery in theatre and things, women being targeted while they haven't even had a chance to bring life in the world in maternity units. And even the white helmet rescue workers, deliberate tactics with double targeting of sites with airstrikes to deliberately get the rescue workers to maximise the massacre. So we also have within our own borders Mr. Cameron creating quite a smokescreen with this EU referendum, which has been quite an hornet's nest to cover up all the problems that are going on in the world, and totally irrelevant. Well, we have the biggest refugee crisis in the world in history. I'm also particularly bringing to you, when I've commented on Facebook, that we have a lot of Assad supporters here in Great Britain. Some of the threads of comments were quite horrendous to some comment that I put out and things. So my question is, how can art penetrate the hearts of the perpetrators of violence and crimes against humanity and stop all the pain?
It's a very interesting question. Would anybody like to delve into that?
There's been several people that quite on.
I'm doing it. I thought one actually demonstrated that very well, but I think a sort of tangent of that question is how, and we've been talking about it between us just now, is how do we get exactly that beyond us here, I imagine, are all interested in human rights, freedom of expression and so on. But one of the things that I've found so encouraging here in the UK is just how the audience for art has just exploded. There was so much bigger audience, I think, now for art, and so many artists opening up exactly these points, actually, to the younger generation as well. Art, there's two trends that I've seen in art in comparatively recent times. One is there's more temporary work, but also there's much more participatory practice. But how we reach a right-wing government who are excluding humanities from education in quite a serious way now, I think is a huge challenge for all of us. But it was great on the Europe question to see yesterday or the day before in The Guardian that 250 key cultural figures, for instance, have brought up the question of Europe and wanting to stay joined up rather than become isolationists, for instance. And I think art has gone back to being incredibly political, actually now in far more deep ways, and perhaps it has. I don't know whether others agree, but that's what it seems to me. So the last Venice Biennial, for instance.
Other artists are responding in a different way. Personally, I did a journey myself, and I tried to look at the remains and the mark left, the traces left by people who are in the move, people who are in transit. And it's funny because when I was filming in Macedonia border, I had that question to myself as well. Am I not doing the same thing as Ai Weiwei? So this is still something I'm still asking myself.
So I'd be interested, do you have any successful examples of where your work has led to a discussion with someone who's initially quite hostile, and you've managed to help get them to make a leap of imagination and put themselves in someone else's shoes?
I mean, there are many examples from Amnesty's work. Many of them aren't published because governments don't necessarily want people to know that Amnesty has influenced their thinking, so they don't like to talk about that. But we have had some public examples where the government of Mongolia, the president of Mongolia came out and said that Amnesty's position on the death penalty had changed his mind, and he had abolished the death penalty in his country based on information received from Amnesty. So it does happen, but it happens behind the scenes.
So there's a few things. Definitely in my time making documentaries, that was often my goal, to kind of break down the kind of idea divide, and the series of films that I made in Syria, which in a way very much about like the banality of daily life. The kind of responses to because at that point, it was very much a story of it being an axis of evil, and the kind of there's a lot of characters within the there's 5 hours of films, and they kind of ran like a soap opera. So you kind of get into the various love affairs of different people, and several of those individuals were not fundamentalist, but kind of had very strong Islamic views that kind of may be considered as fundamentalist, like they were part of the Muslim Brotherhood or other groups. And the challenge, it's funny because I was initially told by my editor not to bother with trying to kind of humanize or kind of follow up because of the kind of barrier of trying to do that. But in the end, that was the character that I got the most kind of mail about, in terms of somebody being people really enjoying his sense of humour, and the fact that his in the end he has a bit of a dramatic story with his wife getting sick, and there's just a lot of that kind of everyday life, images of everyday life that kind of counter that sense of those people are just so different to us, I could just never really accept them. And then also there was another project that I kind of worked on with my friend, which was in 2008, during the bombing of Gaza. He's from the West Bank, and we were just chatting, and it was kind of on a similar vein of feeling incapable. It was, I don't know if you remember those particular images of just getting a sense of people in Gaza were just getting completely, were trapped in a prison and raining rockets. So we just I mean, it wasn't really even a project, it was just an idea to set up a Facebook page which was tell people of Gaza that you love them, and just basically say you could call plus the code for Israel and plus the code for Gaza, and then try any 6 numbers and call people. And the page got translated into about 25 different languages. And then he started finding out these stories of people who ended up going to visit the people that they'd accidentally come across. Kind of just starting up those kind of direct encounters. And particularly stories of people who had never been to the Middle East, weren't interested in that kind of thing, but kind of thought it was a bit of a kind of a weird lottery of just dialing a number and see who would pick up.
Just to follow there, I think the question is a very interesting one, and it's one that's often posed to us in different organisations, especially when we're being funded with our mission in terms of the arts is to effect change in relation to these issues. But increasingly you realise that change is slow, it's gradual, it's obscure, it's hard to pin down. And I think, increasingly as well, I think those of us who are working within the sector realise that, and maybe this applies to Amnesty as well, when you described, when real change happens we don't even realise it because it's happening behind closed doors. So there's that kind of sense of personal, individual, emotional response which can be transformative at that individual level. But increasingly, I think, from my perspective, I'm really interested in that kind of place of lobbying for change. And I think, it is again about connecting up different ways of working and acting. And I think we're locked out of those lobbying spaces a lot of the time. You're probably not, but I think artists and others are. So I think I think we need to embrace that space, to lobby for political and policy change, for those policies to be implemented on the ground, to manifest in real change for communities of place. And this is the burning issue at the minute in terms of Europe, because there doesn't seem to be any desire to be acting in solidarity across borders in Europe, because the policies are so at odds with each other in each jurisdiction, and therein lies the kind of heart of the problem.
Talking Syria, which is an initiative that started in 2013. It was again a very immediate response to what all these images and information that we've been seeing in the media since the war started. And I felt that there was a vacuum, an emptiness, that we were missing something. I started connecting with Syrians being displaced in the neighboring countries around Syria, in Lebanon, in Turkey and Jordan. And I started asking them to tell me a story about their life back in the country. And it was extremely difficult for me to start a conversation because, some of these people, the first thing they would ask me was, who are you? Why are you interested in my story? And what is my story about? What kind of impact, my story? Are you able to listen to me? Are you listening to me? I had this moment of making a decision. This is not going to be an easy project because we are dealing with trauma. Some people are saying, for 4 years, I've forgotten who I was. And you, a Spanish artist, asking me who I am. It had triggered a lot of things inside me. So I realized that that was a tremendous necessary project to do. And it's actually, I dare to say that it somehow goes beyond the art itself. Storytelling is very, very powerful. It's connecting us with the very deep level of who we are. We're talking, in this case, of war, of conflict, but also we're talking about people who have completely destroyed. With Talking Syria, my aim was to encourage other young people to connect with the human side that the war has been taking away. And I wanted, and that was one of my goals, to reconnect with Syrians themselves, with people who had completely disconnected with the human side. You see the video before, last year we approached by UNESCO. UNESCO, understood that the job we're doing for 4 years with other Syrians that are not only in the UK, but also inside Syria. People who are talking about, and you will see that in the cinema later, talking about the normality. They want to live a normal life, and they want to tell us that they are normal human beings like we. For me, it was extremely important to collect all these stories so we can access them. We can know who they are, who these people are, and how they feel. I've been blogging for quite a while, and I thought that this blog would help, to create a foundation for understanding. I think one of the most dangerous things we face in this time is ignorance. We don't know. And we like to think that technology is connecting us. I think that we had to reconnect again with our human side. I think in this sense, Talking Syria has given the opportunity to many people who now are displaced across Europe and internally in Syria to reconnect with them, with themselves, and to find common experiences, to remind themselves that we are in a war, but we're also human beings. I can feel the power of doing this project. I think it's a very necessary project that is rescuing, is preserving the oral heritage of this community.
Can I just reinforce that point, actually? Because what terrifies me is, we've had the Holocaust, we've had othering in so many ways historically, and we've had the slave trade, where slave traders literally lived above the people who were being traded out of Ghana and other countries, and clearly couldn't see these people as human beings. And it is terrifying now to see this othering of people who are fleeing all sorts of incredibly difficult situations. And so I think these personal stories are hugely important. And I gave a talk the other day to some politics students, and the person who ran the politics, it was a politics MA, and she was saying what you have to realise is that for politics students to hear about art and from artists, it kind of wrong puts them, because they don't deal with the personal. They are taught to be objective, to be quite positioned away from the personal. And I think what art so importantly does is, is connect, is to bring in the personal, to do exactly what Juan said, to remind us, people we're all pretty much the same. We have to act with humour and enthusiasm and energy and all of those things. What I would say, I think if I use this moment, is that artists need support. So recent research has shown that artists' average salary in this country, average income, is below £11,000. If that's a measure, you know, if income is a measure of a so-called decent society, that is appalling. It is really absolutely shocking. So, for my moment, I would really like to be able to support artists, including and like Juan, who's doing this incredibly important work. Often actually for very little reward. All credit to.
Well, I like to say that my art practice become more collaborative. You know, I always has this issue of the authorship. I'm very interested in collaboration. You know, the work that you saw earlier on that I met in Colombia. You know, this artist I met, and she said, I'm doing this project, and I asked her, what's the name of your project? And she said, Miedo a qué in Spanish. In English is, what are you afraid of? And I said, well, this is my project. She stole my project. But she stole my project 3 years before even I was thinking of doing this project. So 3 years later, after she started this project, a Spanish artist came to Bogota and realized that she'd been working in my project 3 years. It was an extraordinary thing. It really have a big impact in my practice, really. I mean, I was making this reflection again about who own ideas and who own, you know, the project, you know. I eventually asked Lorena, would you mind to be my project manager? Because, you know, you seem to know very well the city. So I need to work in the city, which I don't know. And I don't have much time to do that. So she actually became my companion, and she really kindly, you know, spent all this time with me until I found what I wanted to do in Bogota. After that, I moved to Palestine, and I did a project in Ramallah and Nablus, again in collaboration with students from the Al-Najjar University. They asked me the first week I was there, you know, in Al-Mahatta Gallery, the people were asking me, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't simply know. I've never been in Palestine before, and I have to be here to know what I want to do. Again, for a few days, these students from the media department at Al-Najjar University, they were going with me, walking, and protecting me, you know. They were protecting me, and I was asking questions about, I want to film there, we can't go there with you, Juan, why not? And eventually they said to me, can't you stop asking stupid questions? And I said, there's no answer for your question. You are an international artist coming to Palestine, and your freedom of movement is compromised now. So you knew that now, when you were in London, sitting on your comfortable sofa, but now you are here, and you are suffering the same that we are suffering on a daily basis. So again, my project was about that, about the lack of freedom to move in a place, in a territory that is supposed to be your land. The artist, but it's also the voices of many, many people who are voiceless. And I feel sometimes we're talking about refugees, and there are many people here who have that experience. but we don't listen to that voice. I think we need to give room and space for the refugees to speak out as well.
Thank you very much. I'll follow on just with a few final thoughts. It's been a real pleasure being here and speaking with you all today, but we shouldn't forget, I think, how privileged we are in London to be able to sit here and have this conversation, because in order for us to talk as freely as we are doing and for artists to operate in the way that they do in this country, you need to have freedom of expression. You need your right to freedom of assembly to be realised, and we're very lucky to have that here. And there are many countries where we wouldn't be able to have an event like this, where we'd be meeting in secret in somebody's living room, you know, and risking imprisonment or worse, just for coming together and having an open discussion like this. So I think that's worth bearing in mind. So I'd like to thank all of our speakers and panel members again, and to thank the audience for your fantastic questions that led to some really interesting discussion. So thank you all very much.